Chapter 8, a study of karma. Be not deceived, God is not mocked. For whatsoever a man soweth, that shall he also reap. Galatians 6:7. The word karma is of Eastern origin and has no exact equivalent in the English language. It signifies the working of a great fundamental law. This law, whether conscious or unconscious, predestines nothing and no one. It exists from and in eternity truth, for it is eternity itself. And as such, since no act can be co-equal with eternity, it cannot be said to act, for it is action itself. It is not the way which drowns a man, but the personal action of the wretch who goes deliberately and places himself under the impersonal action of the laws that govern the ocean's motion. Karma creates nothing, nor does it design. It is man who plans and creates causes, and karmic law adjusts the effects, which adjustment is not an act, but universal harmony, tending ever to resume its original position, like a bow which bent down too forcibly rebounds with corresponding vigor. If it happens to dislocate the arm that tried to bend it out of its natural position, shall we say that it is the bow which broke our arm, or that our own folly has brought us to grief? It is not involved in decrees in darkness purposely to perplex man, nor shall it punish him who dares to scrutinize its mysteries. On the contrary, he who through study and meditation unveils its intricate path and throws light on these dark ways, in the windings of which so many men perish owing to their ignorance of the labyrinth of life, is making for the good of his fellow man. Karma is an absolute and eternal law in the world of manifestation, and as there can only be one absolute, as one eternal, ever-present cause, believers in karma cannot be regarded as atheists or materialists, still less as fatalists. For karma is one with the unknowable, of which it is an aspect in its effects in the phenomenal world. While karma is the implacable law of cause and effect, bringing to you in exact justice the net results of your past thoughts, desires, and acts, it does not do so in detail, and hence it is not the avenging nemesis it is so frequently represented to be. For the only decree of karma, an eternal and immutable decree, is absolute harmony in the world of matter as it is in the world of spirit. It is not therefore karma that rewards or punishes, but it is we who reward or punish ourselves according as we work with, through and along with nature, abiding by the laws on which that harmony depends or breaking them. It is not your acts that are the cause of karma, but the possession or lack of certain soul qualities, which is the cause both of your thoughts, desires, and acts, whose effects are brought to you by the great law of harmony for readjustment. The lords of karma, spoken of so frequently in the Oriental teaching, would mean, in European parlance, the conscious forces which brings about the natural sequence of events. These forces, however, are not blind, unintelligent streams of force against which you must hopelessly battle, but are the conscious, intelligent executors of the law of divine harmony or love. Their sole object is to spiritualize and perfect both the planet and its inhabitants. Hence, disobedience to the law is not punished, but is adjusted, even though the adjustment brings about sorrow and suffering. The decrees of karma are not something to be endured as a punishment, but if in ages past you have made mistakes and failed to gain certain soul qualities, which are necessary for your further progress, these great entitized powers place before the soul the conditions which are made necessary by your past disobedience or inaction, which the soul itself chooses as the best means of learning the needed lessons and acquiring the needed qualities. The personality may suffer during the experience it undergoes in the conditions selected by the soul, but just as a tornado brings destruction, yet is beneficial in purifying the atmosphere and sweeping away old accumulated conditions which are detrimental, so with the karmic storms which sweep away the personality, for their purpose is to sweep away old false ways of thinking, that new soul qualities may be put forth and bear fruit. Although the tornado is a result of the inharmony and impurity created by man, still it is used as an agent of karma to dissipate the accumulated forces of evil and to readjust the atmosphere and permit new conditions more advantageous for the evolution of the planet and its inhabitants to manifest. Thus the tornado was not the cause of the destruction of life and property in its path. It was merely the agent for adjusting the cause set up by man. So with the storms of sorrow, disaster, and poverty in your life, everything that comes to you as trouble or sorrow is simply the result of your own shortcoming, your failure to learn the lessons which less painful experiences should have taught you. The fundamental idea of karma is harmony. It is not a punishment, not even an inevitable law of suffering which you must endure. But in the course of your evolution, your higher self chooses to incarnate in certain families and under certain conditions, which will bring out the soul quality which is lacking. The conditions chosen may be the result of causes set up by you in past lives, owing to a lacking quality, or if all these previous causes have been worked out, they may be chosen by the soul, de novo, to develop a new soul quality, without having had any previous connection with them. The main idea of karma, then, is not one of punishment for past failures, but that you may learn your lessons and gain as quickly as possible the soul qualities needed, that you may fulfill your destiny, your special place and work on the grand plan. When the lessons have been learned and the quality gained, the law is fulfilled, and there is neither karma nor anything else to hold you to the old conditions, except your own free will. And if you hold to them after you have learned the lessons, you are but setting up fresh karma. Therefore, instead of sitting down dejectedly and saying that you will bear everything as your karma, much as a child might stoically bear a whipping, rather be like the child who recognizes the justice of the whipping and sees behind it the loving desire of its parents to inculcate a needed lesson, and whose heart is filled with sorrow that it has made the whipping necessary. It is foolish to invoke your past karma with the idea of working it out more quickly, for the law will bring it to you as fast as you are able to conquer and learn the lessons from it. To thus demand that your karma be precipitated is to be overwhelmed by terrible suffering in order to learn the lessons, which a little later you would be strong enough to learn with little or no suffering. To thus demand your karma would be to set up your judgment as superior to that of the lords of karma, thus showing a lack both of discretion and of humility. Hence, special trials might have to come to you to teach you the lessons which otherwise you might have learned happily while working out the law normally as life brought it to you. While you must learn poise and calm under all conditions, at the same time you must seek earnestly within yourself for the soul quality which your trials are most fitted to bring to the surface. And when you have recognized it, strive earnestly to cultivate that quality and manifest it in your life. Then the old conditions will quickly begin to fall away from you, although you will pass through a period of severe testing to prove whether or not you have really learned the lesson and built the desired quality into your soul. Learning the lesson, however, does not mean merely recognizing it or gaining an intellectual conception of what is lacking, but gaining the power to manifest that quality, for the change must be within and not merely on the surface. Recognition of what is lacking is a necessary step in attaining it, but when recognized, there comes the testing to see if you have really gained the quality or merely recognized the lack. For instance, if you know that your great lack is impatience or lack of control of your temper, as long as only it is an outward manifestation is controlled, you will still suffer from the effects of anger, for your friends will say, "He managed to control his temper, but I could see he was boiling inside." If your lacking quality is generosity and you recognize the necessity of being generous, but give merely because you believe it's your duty, or because you expect gratitude in return, those who receive your gifts will instinctively feel the grudging attitude of soul back of the gift and will not send out the feeling of gratitude you are seeking. You will thus suffer from ingratitude until you can give with true generosity of soul. It is not your karma to suffer from specific acts of anger or ingratitude, but it is your karma to learn control of your temper and generosity of soul. If you are driving an automobile and notice something wrong with the engine and stop and adjust it, no harm results. But if you are careless and do not correct the trouble, and the machine is wrecked and you are injured, it was not your karma to be injured by an automobile, but it was your karma to be taught carefulness and common sense. Hence, it is not your specific acts that bring you karma to you, but the lack of soul quality, and any available events, conditions, or circumstance are used to teach you the necessary lessons. Your acts are like leaves on a tree, the result of the amount and character of the sap. If the sap is lacking in life force or is diseased, the leaves will wither and fall. But if the following season the sap is enriched and regains its lacking quality, the tree will put forth perfect green leaves. It is not the fault of the leaves that they drop, but a lacking quality in the leaves. As you realize that it is yourself who is responsible for all the disturbing influences which surround you, and that it rests with you to overcome them by eliminating the causes, you have begun in the right way to work with the law and gain self-knowledge and self-poise. Make yourself one with the law, and all its manifestations will work in harmony. The above is but one phase of the law. In addition to personal karma, there is karma of the family, the community, the nation, the country, the race, and the world, all of which modify and are being modified by the personal karma. For instance, we all suffer from the storms and rigors of climatic conditions, yet some have ample shelter while others have none. We all endure the economic conditions of society, its inequalities, its injustice, etc., yet some suffer more acutely than others according to their personal karma. All members of a family are subject to the same environment, but individual members modify or rise above it. Thus, the individual, the family, the nation, and the planet are both individually and collectively learning their lesson. The lesson for the individual is to recognize his responsibility in bringing about such conditions. Also, the necessity for doing all in his power to bring about better conditions, not only for himself alone, but for all. For he cannot gain the soul qualities he is here to learn without advancing the evolution of the entire planet to a certain extent. Many students of life feel that a great injustice has been done them and that the masters whom they are trying to serve do not remove their physical burdens and push them into positions of ease where they will be able to work and devote their time and thought to the master's work. The masters are just as subject to the law of karma as is the lowliest of Earth's children. They can work with it but not control it. A farmer does the best he can to cultivate his fields, but he cannot make a grain of wheat grow where a grain of rye has been planted. He can enrich the soil and cultivate it so it can bring forth a perfect crop of rye, but the environment or the field and the climate will still be the same, and the grain will still be rye, not wheat. This law is a benign and beneficent one, for it is only by reaping what we have sown and eating of the fruits thereof that we can ever learn to plant wheat instead of tares. Karma is looked upon by many as merely the result of their actions in past lives which determine their present conditions and environment. Well, it is this and much more. With the separation of humanity into the sexes at the close of the third race, or as the Church puts it, the fall of man, the lords of karma took charge of the evolution of the personalized infant humanity, and personal karma became operative, the so-called fall of man being in reality not a fall, but a necessary descent into physical embodiment. Considering humanity as one, as the great body of the heavenly man reflected upon the lowest earth plane and broken up into myriad expressions, each soul or cell of this great body starts out with but one primal controlling desire, namely to gain the necessary experience to fit it to take its proper place and perfectly fulfill its function in the grand plan and become one with its Father in heaven. With this end in view, the soul marks out a path that influences it in all its future incarnations, the local karma of each incarnation being but eddies along the mainstream. While the soul in its higher aspects always realizes its destiny, it must gain its experience in and work through various personalities and is responsible for the action of those personalities. It must build them up from life to life and is responsible for their creation, even to the matter of which they are composed. Thus the soul becomes the higher self or personal God and Savior of the various personalities. The personality may not heed the still small voice of the soul and may fail and fall in sin. But each failure must be corrected and redeemed and the personality brought back to its real work. The number of incarnations depends upon how swiftly the soul gains its experience and learns its lessons, or in how many bypaths the personality is allowed to wander, only to retrace its steps to the main path. It is the retracing of these wandering steps that is ordinarily referred to as karma, cause and effect. The cause being the going astray, violating the law. The effect, the retracing of the steps, the return to harmony. This is beautifully condensed in the Bible story of the prodigal son. Often incarnation after incarnation is spent in a sort of lethargy, experiencing again and again the same things without learning the lesson they are intended to teach. Sorrow and suffering and loss are often the only weapons that can awaken the personality from its lethargy to ultimately accomplish the main work. No two souls have or need precisely the same experience. If we take the circulation of the blood from the time it is propelled outward from the heart to perform its work to the time it returns again to the center, we will have a fair illustration of the working of the law of karma. Humanity as a whole is the bloodstream composed of myriads of personalized corpuscles, all propelled by the one living force and vitalized by the one breath to accomplish its great work in the heavenly man. Man is composed of free will, and that his higher self has the will to accomplish its greater work, but the will of the personality is only free in a limited sense. It is free to stray from the path, and the higher self cannot compel obedience, but can only take advantage of every experience to mold the personality and ultimately bring it into the main channel. The soul, being complex in its nature, must seek for experience upon the plane of differentiation, physical plane, through masculine and feminine personalities. Just as the blood corpuscles start out from the heart to accomplish their work in the tissues, and after having been purified by the breath return to the heart, so these separated expressions of the soul start out from the center upon their great journey, called in the Eastern teaching the cycle of necessity, and having been purified by the Spirit, return to their Father in heaven. The blood may have a long, tedious journey and be met by apparently insurmountable obstacles ere it can accomplish its work and enter the stream that is returning to the heart, just so the soul may have to overcome great obstacles before it can return to the heart center. This point of return is the awakening of the personality to its higher self. It may be called conversion or what you will, but it is a recognition of its immortal destiny and a determination to walk consciously in the chosen path, its will one with its higher self. This, however, does not mean that the old karma has been wiped out, for as the Master Jesus plainly stated, "For verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth pass, one jot or one tittle shall in no wise pass from the law till all be fulfilled." Many ask how the doctrine of karma can be reconciled with the doctrine of forgiveness of sin, but a simple illustration will explain. If a beloved child through disobedience should pull down upon itself some heavy object and break a limb, its parents would forgive the disobedience, soothe its suffering, and lavish love upon it. But the forgiveness could not prevent the child from reaping the result of its acts, could not restore the broken limb, for that could be brought about only by slow and painful readjustment, the knitting of the bones, perhaps with some deformity remaining, no matter how great the forgiveness and love. All the obstacles encountered are not necessarily the result of the soul's minor karma, but may be necessary training to fit it for its chosen work. For instance, if you wish to train a horse to be a hunter, you would take it into the fields, put obstacles in its path, and teach it to jump. But if you desired it to be a staid family horse, you would teach it not to jump, but to jog quietly along a smooth, beaten roadway. You can see this law exemplified everywhere in nature. The seed contains the future tree, and if germinates beneath a rock, or if its growth is impeded by any untoward condition, it will struggle to overcome that condition. And no matter how distorted the growth of its form, it will finally develop into an exact species of a tree pictured within the seed, even though its outward form is imperfect. Therefore, going back to our first simile, if the stream of your karma carries you to the feet or the hands, to the brain or heart of the heavenly man, do the duty that lies nearest you cheerfully and to the best of your ability, and diligently learn the lessons that its perfect accomplishments will teach. It is the duty of the feet to support and carry, the hands to execute, the brain to plan and direct, the heart to furnish the life force to all parts. But unless each performs its duty in its own place, and performs it well, the whole man must suffer. Let go, then, the things that are holding you back. Throw yourself into the stream. Push out into the current where you will not get stranded in the eddies. Cease to cling so desperately to the rocks and snags against which you are tossed, for they are a sign of shallow water. Have faith to believe that your brothers and sisters are also in the stream in their proper place, and are learning the lessons they have incarnated to learn. Have faith that your Father in heaven knows their needs as well as your own, and is watching over them as well as you, and has promised that no good thing will he withhold from them that love him.